everybody, it's Hannah Kinkade here at Go for Wardrobe. Yesterday I spoke to a good friend of mine, Josie Day, who I work with on OTR2 with Beyoncé and Jay-Z. She's also worked as the head of wardrobe for Halsey and worked with other artists such as Robbie Williams and Beck. I really wanted to talk to Josie as she'd made a career move from TV production into wardrobe, and I thought this could be interesting for any of you thinking about having a career change at the moment. Amongst other things, we talked about being a woman in the music industry and the importance of mental health while out on tour.
Welcome, Josie. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We just got some questions for you today. The first one is, I'd really like to talk to you about how you changed your career from what you were doing before into wardrobe and costume, and what made you want to do that, and what was your kind of motivation behind a career change?
So before I was working in wardrobe and costume, I was working in American reality television. I worked mostly as like associate producer, story producer. I worked on shows like Top Chef Junior, Chrisley Knows Best. I worked on a really cool show called The Raft, where I lived on a boat for 6 weeks. It was, yeah, it was
Sounds
really
amazing.
It was cool. It was actually really cool. And to be honest, my change into wardrobe was kind of accidentally necessary, I guess. I was working for this production company at their office in LA, and they kind of overpromised what they were able to give me, you know. And so I called a really good friend of mine who had been working in wardrobe for a while, and I was like, I just need something to help me get over what I'm in right now. And so she took me on my first tour, which was a small theater tour in America. And I really had no idea what I was getting into. I was really excited to be going out with my best friend. She trusted me. She said it was something, that I would be good at, but I wasn't really sure. And after my first tour, I didn't work again in wardrobe for a year. I moved to Tennessee and Atlanta and worked on some television shows. And then I took another tour, and I just really liked what we did. I liked working around costumes. I liked working in live shows. And I had no idea that I'd be good at it, but I knew that I was good at it and that I liked it. And at first, it started being like TV show, and then I would take a tour just to sort of supplement things and enjoy myself, because I really enjoyed it. And then after about 2 years and maybe 4 tours, I took my first supervisor role, and then it just took off from there.
Yeah, it kind of snowballs.
Yeah.
You meet people, and then you get more and more jobs.
Exactly.
And obviously you were enjoying what you were doing.
Yeah.
So obviously it wasn't really a planned career move. Obviously you went from like TV and like live shows of like kind of entertainment shows into doing like music tours and theatre tours. What are those kind of like, was it really different, or is it quite similar in some ways?
It's wildly different. For television, there's a lot of waiting around. There's a lot of just standing around and waiting for the set builders to build the set, or the lighting to change the lighting before you start filming. Whereas in touring and in costumes, there's almost no waiting around. There's always a hustle. You always have to be cognizant of the time. Are you taking enough time? Are you taking too much time?
Yeah.
It's wildly different.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think that wardrobe is just messing around with clothes, which it kind of is a little bit. And I think there's people out there that do it very badly, and there's people that do it well, and you do it very well. But you must have had some expectations once you started doing wardrobe jobs, what it was going to be like when doing it full time. What's the reality versus what your expectations were?
So, like I said, at first I didn't really know what to expect, but once I got into the role of working in wardrobe, I'd say about 2 years in, once I became a supervisor, my expectations were blown. I had no idea how many responsibilities you had as a supervisor of an entire department, but you don't really think about it like that. There's so many responsibilities. You're responsible for the stage, you're responsible for the movement, you're responsible for what the talent wants, what the stylist asks you for, what the production manager needs from you that day. You kind of have to have 10 arms and 3 different brains. And hopefully you're working, you know what I mean? Like you really I have to write everything down because I have, especially when you're working so much, I have a goldfish brain. That's what I call it. Someone says something to me and I completely forget. So I have to write everything down because I had no idea that it is more than just the clothes. I had no idea that you have to really hold on to things, process them, and then regurgitate them to your crew if you're lucky enough to have assistants and people who can help you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I think it's a lot more than perhaps what other people will perceive that we do, which is just, oh, well, you just wash wardrobe and just some clothes or whatever, to go do your laundry, girls. I think there's a lot more to it than that. a lot of juggling and a lot of managing.
There's so much managing, and that's what they don't think about. What people who just say, oh, they just fiddle with clothes and it's so pretty and cute, they don't realize that you're in direct communication with the talent, who is everyone's boss.
Yeah.
You're in direct communication with the stage manager. You're in direct communication with the production manager. You're in direct communication with your assistant, and then the assistants you get throughout the day. I mean, there's so many things that you have to deal with. And it's not just cleaning costumes or sewing costumes. It's half the time when you're the boss, you don't even get to clean or sew.
No, it's just about managing people. And then if you've got a show with dancers and you've got a million dancers, or you've got band, or there's also many variables of things that can go wrong, in your day, or go right, hopefully. But it's not just messing around with some clothes. I think I find I get the bigger shows I do, I don't really do much hands-on sewing or doing any more at all. It's just, and I'm like, oh, I long quite nice for a day when I could just sit and sew for a day. But you don't get to do that much.
When you're the supervisor of a wardrobe department, you really don't. By the end of the day, you're like, what the hell did I do today? Because you've done so much, but it hasn't been as hands-on as when you're an assistant.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really difficult to explain it.
Yeah, it's more about delegating tasks and managing other people's time in the best, most efficient way, I think, so that everything gets done. So are you glad that you made the change over from kind of TV and production and producing to costume?
I would say most days I'm glad. There are times where I'll send an email and be like, hey, are you looking for somebody? But most of the time I've gotten offered a few, TV jobs since I've started full-time in wardrobe, and I've turned them all down, and I don't really regret it. So I would say yes, most days I'm really happy that I've made the change, but I've kept my options open. I've kept communications open because you just never know.
Well, I think that's probably a smart thing to do anyway. In a world of kind of freelancing and working for all different kinds of people, it makes sense to just have options and different career opportunities. You never know what will happen, especially at the moment when we're all there's no tours happening and we're all kind of stuck at home going, what's going to happen to our industry? Having other avenues of work is a smart choice. That stuff might start sooner than what we've been doing. So
that's what they're saying.
Yeah, you might find yourself doing a TV job while you're waiting for a tour to come back. So
I know. Well, hopefully it all comes back, and hopefully we survive through this.
Yeah, I think we will. We have to. We're very kind of tough people, I think, from our job, and we're pretty good at getting through things, making stuff work.
I've always said that my wardrobe kit could be like an end of the world kit.
Yeah, exactly.
How much stuff do we have? First aid stuff, we have sewing stuff, we have hand sanitizer. I mean, I didn't have to buy hand sanitizer when this happened because I had so much in my kit.
I thought we didn't have any, and then I started rummaging through my kit and I kept finding random hand sanitizer. I'm like, we got loads of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, I'd squirrel them all away in different places. Do you have any advice for people who are going to do a career change? Anything you that you've learned from what you did? I know yours was more of a kind of gentle accident, but
Yeah, I would say my advice for people thinking of a career change is to like take a day and really consider it. You know, when you've made up your mind and you know this is the way you want to go, just take a moment, get 2 pieces of paper. On one piece of paper, write like 10 goals you have for 5 years from now. And then on the next
good.
piece of paper, write 10 goals you have for 10 years from now. And if what you're thinking of going into fulfills, I don't know, 75% of those goals, then happily and, you know, go into it. But really consider what it is you want from the future, because so often we don't. You know, we just think about what we want will satisfy us now, that will pay this bill, that will do that.
Yeah.
But I think the best advice I can give to people is to think about 5 years and then 10 years. And if you're in your 20s, because I started a bit later, you know, I started when I was like 28, 29. If you're in your early 20s, do even a 20-year goal, just to make sure that you're getting everything that you want. And your wants can change, which is totally fine, but think about it first.
I think that's pretty smart. I don't think I've ever done that. I think I kind of fell into touring music. I let my career kind of guide me, and it went that way from theatre and opera, but I never really did a plan. I suppose I do them now. I suppose I think ahead now, but perhaps if I'd done it when I was in my 20s and just graduated, I'm sure it would have been quite different to what I would do like now looking forward.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too, because I really feel like I didn't write out plans until maybe a year ago. I didn't even start thinking about being 45 until I turned 34, you know?
Yeah.
And I really wish I had had that hindsight when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, at any time really, because then you can successfully, or, you know, as hopeful and successful as you can be at that time, know what you're going into and if it's going to fulfill your future careers or lifestyle.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Thank you.
Thanks.
So a little bit of a kind of offshoot from this is we work in quite a male-dominated industry in general. How do you find working in that kind of industry as a woman?
I find working in a male-dominated industry as a woman on my good days to be fine. Honestly, it's only on like the tired days or like the somewhat bad days where it becomes difficult, because, you know, in this industry on tour, you're pretty much tired all the time. And so it's hard to say this without sounding like the woman who's just complaining about things, but it is really difficult when you just didn't put makeup on for a day because you were too tired. You just rolled out of bed. You've literally just rolled out of bed.
In your pajamas.
In your pajamas, because you have to go into the venue in your pajamas.
Yeah.
And someone looks at you and says you look tired. And you just want to say, no, I look tired. I just rolled off of the bus. Or, you know, you've gone in the venue, you've changed, you've had your breakfast, you're having a really nice day, and you're walking down a hallway and some man says, well, what's wrong? And nothing's wrong. Maybe you just have your headphones in and you're just listening to music, and you just have to be really cognizant of the way you respond, the way you look, the way, like, I understand it's kind of the same for women in all industries, but it's different in the live entertainment in that you live with these people. You know, you go to sleep with them, you wake up with them, they're close to you, they get close to you like family does. And so you want to respond in a way that's like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. Like, I am tired, or I'm just walking down this hallway. Like, just let me be. But you can't respond in that way. You have to, God forbid you roll your eye and then Josie's having a terrible day. You know, don't talk to Josie. It's awful. She rolled her eyes. Like, it's just, and then they find out you get irritated by it, and they really sometimes pick at it. And so it's like, you really just have to really, really be aware of the way you react to situations. And I think it's harder because you are so tired. You're operating on lack of sleep. you're really close with people, but at the same time, you have to understand being close with them doesn't mean you can talk to them like they're your family, because they're not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty unusual. Most people don't wake up out of bed and then are immediately surrounded by all their work colleagues. They've had a cup of tea and a coffee, they've had a shower, they've got ready, they might have done their commute for an hour. It could be 2 hours before they engage with another human being. Whereas we're like immediately in there, you know?
We're immediately in there. And it's hard with men because like they can just roll out of bed and go to work. I mean, it's different for women and men. We have to, you know, it's just the way that society has made it for us. And so it's definitely different when you're living with them and when you're working with them.
Yeah. And I think I've found in wardrobe, kind of working as a supervisor, a lot of production managers I work with are great and brilliant and very supportive when it's not an issue, you know, whether you're male or female, whoever you are, you're just doing your job well. But I have come across men who will be like, oh, well, the women in wardrobe or you girls just go and do your thing, and are very demeaning as a department, and generally as a generally female department, you know, can be quite down on me and us. And you have to kind of, the older I've got, the better I've got at standing up for myself and being like, no. But there are so many times where I've walked away and gone, why didn't I say something? I just let it go, because it's easier to let things go and just kind of be. But definitely got more feisty about it.
2 things to say to that. While it is easier to let things go, that's where it ends up being, you find girls in the bathroom crying. Because I have found girls in the bathroom crying who work in production, who work in video. You know, I have found they just go to the bathroom, they take their time, and they let it out, because you just have to let things go. Because it is easier, especially when you're dealing with a very difficult production manager who's, you know, in his late 50s, who doesn't know how to respond to a woman who asks for things that sometimes they don't want to give. But I find that we ask for certain things, not because it's what we want, but it's because what we've been asked for from our boss, who is everyone else's boss.
Yeah.
And so I do see what you're saying in that. And I've been very lucky to work with men who respect me a lot. But I have worked with men who look at me like, when I ask for a certain type of, let's just say, for example, gum. I ask for a certain type of gum because the artist has asked me, or asked their assistant, or, you know, their assistant has said to me, this is the only thing to chew. So I'll ask for it from the production manager, from the production assistant, and they don't get it. And then they tell me I'm ridiculous and that I can suck it up. And my response is, but it's not for me.
For me, yeah.
It's for your boss. What, should I text the assistant then tell the talent that it's ridiculous and they shouldn't have that kind of gum? And they don't do that with men. Like if sometimes if they're talking to men, they speak in a completely different way. They give them whatever ridiculous request it is that they want. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. I think I've definitely got better at, I stand my ground now, and I just say, you know, no, this is why we need this, and I always have a reason. What I always tell people, and if you have your reason why you need something, they're gonna get it for you.
You're right. But it's unfair because men don't have to have reasons.
No, not always. They don't know. And there are some men I've worked with in the past who have tried to kind of devalue me and my skills and what I should be being paid for a job, and have said, oh, I wouldn't be paying you this. And then at the end of a project, they've actually turned around and gone, actually, you're worth every penny. And it's like, well, I'm glad I changed your mind, but it's really you had that thought in the first place, you know?
It is really. And you know what? I think talking about pay is something that it's a good thing to talk about right now, because women in wardrobe, especially supervisors in wardrobe, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes don't get paid as equally as other heads of their departments. And I know that because I'm pretty open with, you know, what I get paid, because I think you should be. And it's crazy to me that some production managers will offer you such a low rate for, you know, essentially working 24 hours a day for the whole tour. And then, you know, they're not offering, you know, the LD or the stage manager or the other heads of their departments as exponentially low of a rate as they're offering us.
Yeah, I know for sure we definitely don't often get paid the same as a male in an equivalent type role. and in another head of department we just don't.
Mhm.
And it does need to change. And I suppose the only way to make it change is that everybody kind of collectively says, no, we should be being paid equal to other men and other people who are heads of other departments.
Yeah.
And until we all collectively do it, they won't do anything about it.
The damn truth. You're stronger together.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a fight to be fought there. So obviously mental health is very kind of prominent subject at the moment. I feel very strongly about looking after our own mental health and also the mental health of everybody else that we work with on tour, because we are, like you said, that kind of family in some weird dysfunctional way. Do you have any tips or advice on kind of how do you cope, or how we could all cope or do this better? It's a big subject. We can just I know we could talk for like 5 hours on mental health. But.
Well, mental health is extremely important to this job, and I find it's the most lacking thing in this job. This is something I wasn't expecting coming into it. I wasn't expecting the lack of self-care, the lack of a positive environment, because I do feel like a lot of people who tour, and especially older people, they don't have the ability or the time sometimes to take care of their mental health. I find my advice, or what I do, is I have hobbies. So, for example, I know if I want to take an exercise class, I should take it later in the evening on a day off. So that way I can not start drinking at 10 a.m. on the day off with everyone else,
It's good advice.
Yeah. And then so you make something, commit to something, or, a massage at 4 p.m., something in the middle of the day on your day off that breaks it up. So that way you're not just doing what is honestly the norm on touring days off, which is going out and having lots of drinks and dinner, which is really fun, but it's one of the first ways to deplete your mental health. And you see it all the time.
Well, yeah, and you see a lot of people who've been touring for a very long time, and there was a lot of people with mental health issues and addiction issues.
Well, and the hardest part is, I think, Hannah, you can get anything you want on tour. You just write it. You write down 6 bottles of whiskey, and you get on the bus at night, and there's 6 bottles of whiskey. And
magic.
That's cool and fun and stuff, but it needs to be talked about that it's not healthy. And I don't really know how people do it for 20 or 30 years. A lot of the people I know can't. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I was on a tour and a guy dropped dead from a heart attack right in front of us. I mean, it was just incredible. I mean, the ambulance came and they revived him, but he was dead for 2 minutes. I mean, it was the most shocking thing I had seen. It really shook me. And it shook me in a way that kind of woke me up to the industry and the industry standards of crew. Like, we should be taking better care of ourselves. We should be able to have open communication about, hey, like, I don't really feel that good today. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
And I find in my wardrobe department, it's easier. Like, I can talk to you when we're working together. Like, I'm feeling a little bit down, or I can talk to assistants I've had, or, it's easier with the wardrobe because we just kind of understand each other. But as a crew as a whole, I don't think it's talked about enough, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely not talked about enough, and it's not, I suppose, in more structured corporate environments, there's places where you can go if you are struggling, or you also go home and you have your kind of other family, your real family and friends to talk to, whereas on tour, unless you have, there's the phone, but it's not the same. So I think it's important to kind of, like you said, I work after my wardrobe team is a lot easier because you can kind of go, okay, let's ask 5 people or whatever, and we all kind of gel and get on, and we can kind of be more sensitive to each other's mood, and you're aware of each other's how we're feeling. But when there's 400 people on a tour or something, on a big show, like, that's a lot of people. And there's always going to be some people that don't have a lot of friends on the tour and get fall through the cracks, and we all have those days when we just feel like crap.
It's true. And I find sometimes I totally isolate on tours, the big ones, or even like even sometimes the really small ones, because I can't be around, sometimes I just can't be around the behaviors that they want to exude. And so I'm totally isolated. I'll go to my room on days off. I'll go straight to sleep after work. And then something that really helps me is, and you kind of touched on it, like calling your friends at home. It's definitely not the same, but it does remind you that there's other, you have friends and you have people, or call your family if you're close with them. If you're not,
yeah, don't do that.
But
No.
it is really important, I think, to maintain some sort of communication with the people who aren't on tour with you, because it becomes your life, for however long, 2 months or 6 months, you get so involved in it that you can't see out of it. And it's important, I think, to see out of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful. So, I mean, I know we both work with somebody who loves to go tango dancing. Like, I think having a hobby or having something that you like to do that's for you, that's not the job, and that isn't maybe with everyone else on the tour either, it's just something you do, is probably the most important thing in terms of maintaining yourself while you're working.
Exactly.
And then I think there's also that thing of when you come home off tour and we'll go, okay, home now. And I'm now more aware of trying to keep in touch with people I've been directly working with, even just for the kind of few weeks, month after a project, because there can be a real slump. You finish a tour and you get home, and then even with these people for maybe months at a time, and then suddenly it can be a really lonely time when you get home and you're not with everybody anymore. So I think we all should be more aware of keeping in contact with our kind of tour friend when we get home, making sure, hey, you okay? How you doing today? Just a little text. I think it really means a lot. It means a lot when I get them, and I know I try and do it more now myself.
Yeah, that's really true. And I don't think about that often, like, unless I'm just coming off of a tour. Like, when you come home, you do feel all of a sudden you're like, whoa, because you're just bombarded with all of this. And while you're in it, maybe it takes forever, but at the end, it's like it just ended with the snap of a finger. Yeah, and then you're home and things look different because you've had all these different experiences. You've met all these people. Maybe you've fallen in love, maybe made a best friend, and then all of a sudden you're home and it's quiet and there's nothing to rush to get done. And you're like speechless because you're alone and you've been surrounded by people, literally surrounded by 12 people on your bus, but then more people when you're outside for months.
Yeah. And probably we're surrounded by noise the whole time. It's like a kind of constant stimulus, and then suddenly you're home and it's quiet and there's no people there. And for some people that's a really can be a really hard time. So I feel like being aware that we just all need to look after each other a little bit, that some people don't have a family or a partner or anyone to go home to, or a dog or anything.
Yeah, that's true. I'm very
lucky. A little doggy.
She brings all the light into my life when I come home. Yeah, if I didn't have her, I don't know what I would do because I live alone. My family doesn't live in the city. And I do have friends, but they also tour. A lot of my good friends are also touring. So it's pretty quiet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tricky one. So finally, I just wanted to ask you, you may not know the answer to this, but do you have kind of career goals or what's next, or do you have a dream job that you would love to do one day?
Well, it's hard for me right now to say my career goals because, we're in this limbo.
Yeah.
So that's a really difficult question for me to answer.
Yeah.
But my dream job I already had, and it was working with you. That was like the epitome of success in our career,
Yeah.
I learned so much. That was my dream job. So I feel very fortunate that at 34, I've already done, I feel good. I feel really good at where I am, but that really makes my goals hard to achieve, so when I look forward in my life, when I look to 45, I don't necessarily want to still be living on a tour bus when I'm 45 as a career. And I would like something with a bit more consistency, so when I come home or when I'm home, I know what I'm doing. I don't have that panicked feeling of what's next. What do I do?
Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster.
It is. It's a roller coaster. It's like, it's crazy because you can book a job that's 4 months and then be like, yay. And then a month into it, you're like, uh-oh, what am I going to do for the rest of the year? It doesn't make sense. But I know that I want to do something in my community. You know I want to be a bit more community oriented and a bit more consistent. But for a full-time career, I'm not sure what it is that's coming up.
Who knows? It's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me, Josie.
Thanks, Hannah. I had a great time.
It's a pleasure. Well, keep well in LA, and I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Have you made a recent career change? Do you have any advice that could be helpful to others? If so, leave it in the comments below. With more great chats coming up with top industry professionals, so subscribe to the channel now for more tips, tricks and chat about costume and wardrobe in the entertainment world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.